Good morning. You're listening to Insurance Matchmaking, your path to health, life, and Medicare coverage with Matt Libby Insurance. And now, sharing his knowledge, here's your host, Matt Libby.
Welcome back to Insurance Matchmaking. If you listened last week, you met Tyler Lannom from the Beacon Legacy Group. I have got him back on here again for another week because I know there's tons of things we can talk about. We kind of scratched the surface of, we both work a lot in the same industries. We, especially, I do all health insurance, all ages, but my focus is generally kind of Medicare. And we both want to try to get a hold of these people before they're retiring because that's kind of you're behind the power curve, we say. What age is really kind of, I know you get people who are already retired, but where do you prefer someone, maybe I'm phrasing that wrong. What's kind of of course, today is the ID time.
Yes.
But what age you should say that, hey, you're already kind of late thinking about it. You should have maybe started 2 or 3 years ago on your planning.
Depending on health and those things too, of course, we have folks coming in their late 80s and even 90s and we do an estate plan for them. But why does it make more sense to do it earlier? Again, ideal age frames as we're going into our mid 60s into our early 70s, we're exiting into retirement. That's the time. If you definitely don't have an estate plan, we need to get one in place. And why is that? Talking about the power curve and getting ahead of things, we want to make sure that we're looking at a couple of big things. Number one is tax planning. That could be income tax or capital gains taxation, estate tax planning, and doing that early versus waiting until we are further in our lifespan and kind of on the retirement arc. There's a variety of reasons that are difficult to go into now, but planning earlier for taxation gives us flexibility as we go older, working in concert with an agent or an advisor. I think the second thing is asset protection. That could be some long-term care planning. It could be other versions of asset protection, going back to tax again. We want to plan for that well before we need things like long-term care needs in our life. And that's a big threat for a lot of middle and upper middle class Tennesseans. And then lastly, just the general estate planning. And what does that mean? It means who's going to get our stuff after we pass away? How are we going to, manage our insurance product, our real estate, our qualified accounts? We don't want to be at the end of the rope just thinking about those things. A lot of people might have an additional layer as they get a little bit older, but as we're getting into retirement, that is the ideal time to get your estate plan done.
Now, one of the things we kind of overlap on, I guess, too, is, those that might be falling under that TennCare umbrella.
Yeah.
And you do a lot of that. I help people maybe apply for TennCare to help them save on their Medicare, or sometimes it'll prompt, like when I do a healthcare application, and especially with the children, it usually will prompt them, if we're going through the healthcare marketplace, it'll prompt them to, the kids will apply for TennCare or the CHIP program, so they kind of get started into the Medicaid system. A lot of people don't realize Medicaid is a national program, but it's called things in different states.
Yeah.
In California, it's Medi-Cal. All it is there's a hyphen in the middle, but because it's medical.
Yeah, Medi-Cal. Yeah.
But Michigan, they call it bridges, because they got the upper and lower peninsula, so that they got the bridge. And we have TennCare.
Yeah.
So I get involved on the healthcare side, but I do get some of those questions, and that's why it's great to have a resource like yourself. Those people that start like, well, should I give my kids my house? Should I sell my house? So you work on some of those, the TennCare thing of looking for like the spend it, because I'll have people ask me about, how do I do how do I start the spend down? It's like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how to tell somebody how to do that. I'm not a lawyer.
Yeah.
So that's not my job. But so tell us a little bit about how you help people in that TennCare realm.
Yeah. That's beautiful. How kind of you lined up your involvement with Medicare. And again, thank you for having us on the Insurance Matchmaking show today, Matt. And one of the beautiful things about you're working with Medicare, that's a big core of your business model. And of course, Medicare premiums can fluctuate when people are in taking required minimum distributions and things like that. And you're really helping out with a lot of that. we are coming in from a long-term care perspective with TennCare. So not really doing the family TennCare for like, even adult children or minor children or single moms. Most of Tennesseans are not coming into direct contact with TennCare right until they're in retirement, and in our practice, really until they need to apply for long-term care.
Yeah.
And so that can be a really painful process for a lot of Tennesseans, right? How do I preserve my home from estate recovery? How do we preserve, we've got a couple $100,000 in a CD or an IRA, but like we don't have enough to pay these $10,000 nursing home payments for the next 2 years for my spouse. Is there anything we can do, or do we really have to spend every dime? And the answer is no, you don't. But we need to come together and make a crisis plan where our law firm will submit the Medicaid application, work with other professionals to make sure we're thinking about other things that coordinate with the TennCare application, like a Medicare insurance premium that's still intact. And really our whole goal is to get Medicaid eligibility for the individual that's in the nursing home or that's receiving long-term care from TennCare, our Medicaid agency, while preserving as much of the assets as we can for that typical healthy spouse called a community spouse that might still be at home. And of course, there's a lot there, but that's kind of the elevator version of what crisis planning is for TennCare.
Right. Oh, I get a lot of questions from clients that are like, well, she's only drawing $800 a month on her Social Security. Should we just go ahead and get divorced? And I was like, well, one thing, I'm not a lawyer, but I generally don't ever recommend anybody get divorced. But my thing is I'll run into these seniors who get married, and one had all their medical benefits. They were, they had TennCare, or they were getting subsidized, subsidized on their prescription level, and have a really expensive drug, and then they marry someone who's more affluent, and now they don't qualify for any of those benefits. And I'm kind of I wish they'd talked to me before, and I could have counseled them not to get married, just because how much they're going to eat up their legacy with their medical costs that were covered. And it's like, and I've always said, I don't know if they can legally do it. I'm like, can you get a pastor? Because I know what it is. I mean, it's we're in the Bible Belt, or and somebody seniors. They're not going to live in sin.
Right.
But they met in assisted living, or they met at the senior center, and it's like this person's going to lose all their benefits because they decided to get married because they want to do things right. And I'm kind of like, can we just get a pastor who will have the eyes of the Lord and not file the state paperwork?
And what I'll say from the legal perspective is, Matt is 100% correct. I think the biggest thing is choosing to get married, depending on where we are in our lifespan, can have really wonderful tax benefits and financial benefits, and then it can have some really unforeseen negative consequences that are hard to unwind. And I think Matt just articulated that. As far as like Medicaid divorces or getting divorced for long-term care purposes, all I can say on this show today is before someone takes action like that, they really need to go see an elder law attorney. That is not always the case. Medicaid's done some regulatory policy changes where like a Medicaid divorce, when an application is being submitted or at the 11th hour, might not save the day. It depends on the facts. And so people need to really, and that's the thing, is go see a professional. Go talk to Matt about your insurance needs before you go and just make a unilateral decision. Before someone chooses to take the grave step of divorce because their loved one is in a facility or something, come and talk to someone and get all of your options before you take that drastic step.
Now, you've mentioned that I know you'll do an initial consultation for estate planning that's no charge.
Yeah.
If they get too many questions like, hey, you kind of exhausted my free consultation. We maybe need to meet again. I'll have to charge you for that, even if you don't set up an estate plan.
Yeah.
You mentioned, though, like if people are thinking of getting as you said, the Medicaid divorce, is that something that you cover in your free consultation of this is why that might be a solution, or why it won't be, but if you think that's a way to go, we can help you with that. But if we help you with it, then you're contracting us.
That's exactly what. Thank you for asking that, Matt. Our industry, we're scary. Everyone's in suits. A lot of people are just honestly have a little bit of fear of attorneys, and that's not how our practice operates at all. Anybody who comes to an event that we do, webinar or seminar, we do a free conference, and that usually is up to an hour, and they can ask us really whatever types of topics they want to talk about. If they're interested, in long-term care planning, or if it's traditional estate planning, all of those things are covered, and then that's really the mission in that conference is by the end of that, first off, are we in a crisis? Do we need to do a TennCare application? Because is there an asset protection need? Sometimes we go down a line of questions and it's like, wow, I don't think this individual even realized the situation they were in. And then yes, at the close of that meeting, we, everything we do is flat fee, and we'll kind of go over the scope of what our representation would be. If there's an individual listening to this and they're like, well, what about if we just don't want to go to an event? That's fine too. There is a fee for our conferences if someone's just coming right in. Mm-hmm. That fee is always applied. Always applied to whatever services they ultimately retain us to do.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah,
that's about a $300 value typically.
And now that's one of the things in my industry. I wish, because I think I've even told you about the fact, the prescription drug plans. Most of them now they're not commissionable, and there was always a commission on there. I didn't get in this business to sell drug plans because I'd have to sell, I have to sell 1 million of them to earn a living.
Yeah.
And that's not as embellished as much as you might think. But a lot of them went non-commission. But when we do our reviews during the annual enrollment period, that's where we spend the most time. So I'm spending all this time trying to make sure you've got the right drug plan, that you don't go bankrupt because you're going to have to pay out of pocket for your drug because it's not on that company's formula. So it's very critical that we do that. I don't get commission for that. I can't charge a fee in my business because I earn commission. And I wish my solution there is, and I'm simple as like a $50. You pay a $50 refundable appointment deposit. You don't show for your appointment, I keep that $50 because you just took a time slot away from me. Is one thing.
Yeah.
If you reschedule, okay, you don't have to pay another $50 because you reschedule. If you sign up for a commissionable product, I refund your $50 because I can't earn.
And you can do this, right? What you're
no,
saying.
I'm saying
you can't.
I can't. I mean, and that's one of those things I would love to see.
Legislation come in, yeah.
Because I have some people get, well, what do I owe you? I said, no, I'm sorry, you don't owe me anything.
And there's nothing we can do about that.
Some want to pay me out. I've had people send me like a gift card for a restaurant, for coffee or something, just because they feel like they got to do something. Yeah. I had one lady give me a picture. It's actually, I had it hanging on my other office.
Cool.
That I really thought she was going to do business with me, and she never came back. And I go, okay, that's why she gave me the picture. But it was a really neat picture. It was like what do you call it? Engraving.
Yeah.
Or and it was kind of historic. So it was a neat picture.
That's cool. Yeah.
It was a nice gift. I would have much rather earned a commission off of writing her plan.
That is really frustrating, and thank God you're out here. Though I didn't even really know that there was an agent here in Cookeville that really focused a good portion of their time on Medicare planning, because that's the thing. In retirement, we kind of dovetail into some of that too. We'll pull up an Excel sheet because Medicare, as you can tell, you do this full time, can be so complicated, and it really matters on how people are thinking about their Medicare plans. And so I'm thankful that you're here, Matt, and doing that.
Well, it looks like we're coming up on our break. I don't want to overrun it like I did on the previous show, so we'll take a short pause here and listen to some commercials, and then we'll get back at it.
This is David Price, your Twin Lakes Business Solutions Consultant. Are you or someone you know planning for college this year? Twin Lakes is proud to partner with the Foundation for Rural Service to provide graduating seniors in our service area scholarship opportunities to continue their education. FRS scholarships empower rural students to enhance their communities with valuable skills and experience. You may apply at twinlakes.net, but hurry, the application deadline is February 14th. Prepare for your future today.
Join Upper Cumberland Habitat for Humanity for their Race to Build Hope 5K Run Walk, Saturday, March 29th at 8 a.m. at the Livingston Central Park. The race is supporting Upper Cumberland Habitat for Humanity's mission to build affordable homes and strengthen communities. So lace up and join the fun Saturday, March 29th at 8 a.m. at Livingston Central Park for Upper Cumberland Habitat for Humanity's Race to Build Hope 5K Run Walk. To register, visit uchabitat.org.
And now, back to Insurance Matchmaking with Matt Libby Insurance.
All right, welcome back. I still have my guest, Tyler Lannom, with the Beacon Legacy Group here with me. We were talking about TennCare and some of those things. Just kind of go over some of the definition. I know, we talk about wills and trusts and probates, and I know what but some of our listeners may confuse, especially wills and trusts. I think people get those kind of confused a little bit.
Yeah, let's just start off with the will. Why would an individual need a last will and testament? Well, really to determine who gets your assets. A lot of these listeners have a residence. They have a farm. Some other folks might have commercial property, but let's just talk about real estate for a moment, right? Most of you that are listening, that if you are married, that surviving spouse will retain that property with rights of survivorship on the property deed. So in most marriages, right, it's that surviving spouse, when he or she passes away, that's when that will actually comes into action. And where does it come into action at? It comes into action at the local probate court, okay? And that probate court proceeding will be open in a local probate court, right? We're here in Putnam County. So if someone passed away in Putnam County with a will, their will would be admitted to the court. And that court proceeding just makes sure that will is carried out. What happens to that house? Is it going to be sold and distributions made to your children? Is it going to be bequeathed to a certain person, like one of your children? What about that? What about the farm? And then when it comes to life insurance or bank accounts or IRAs, those may or may not come into the probate estate process, right? You're always working with your clients on probably doing a beneficiary review and things like that. And of course, those can pass by contract. Oftentimes, those do come into the estate sometimes. I have several right now where there's CDs and things that are coming into the will.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's intentional by the decedent because of what they're trying to do with those asset classes. And sometimes it's unintentional. But I think the bottom line is for the listeners, your will does require a governmental proceeding that can sometimes be a little bit pricey after death that your children will have to navigate to administer the will. Sorry, I was yapping there.
No, you're fine. Because I want to make sure I phrase the question correctly. Is especially like in those TennCare issues and things like that, where the family's trying to set up a trust or whatever, mom, grandma, grandpa, who isn't quite all there anymore.
Capacity.
But they haven't been legally determined incompetent or what. What do you do in that case? I mean, do you have to have them get the diagnosis and get the family, because maybe they're pretty sharp still. They're just the memory, and they're fighting you on certain things that you're trying to do to look out for their interest. What advice do you give people that run into that situation of, I don't know that mom's not capable anymore, but how do I, or how do we get to where, so we have some legal record that, they're not ready to give a power of attorney.
Yeah. And so again, you're asking like what advice for maybe that adult child who might be in their 50s or 60s for their elderly parent or something like that. And just to kind of zoom out, I think the biggest thing I want to convey to the listeners is capacity, competency. We, on one of our previous shows, we talked about when should we get our planning done? Should we wait until we're 85 or 90? No, we should not. Earlier is better. And capacity is a big problem, right? Someone comes into us, their adult child makes an appointment. They come in and they also let us know that there's an Alzheimer's diagnosis or there's a dementia diagnosis. Well, that doesn't by itself shut down the ability for that person to contract or make an estate plan, but oftentimes it does. The question becomes, is there any capacity to really engage in planning? And oftentimes the answer is no. When there are diagnoses like that and there is cognitive decline, we're going to err on the side of caution. We have a duty to do that as attorneys. Right. And so at that point, really, that individual has lost the ability to create an estate plan. Now, going back to your just pointed question on like what advice though, what about a caregiver or someone that's helping out? We're not to the stage where we have lost full capacity, but we're in this kind of gray zone essentially, right? Is what you're asking. It can get difficult, okay? Because really that's where the question becomes, when does that power of attorney come into existence if the individual maybe has an early onset diagnosis for dementia? So what we do in our documents, we stipulate that successor agent, probably the adult child, Tyler, whoever that is, right? They have to go and get a medical affidavit notarized by a medical doctor, by their attending physician or their primary care physician, and that's the arbiter of truth. Once that affidavit's been signed, that person has lost capacity. The powers then transfer from the principal to the agent. A lot of lawyers just ignore this issue altogether, and ultimately, if parent and child can't come to a consensus, you're going to court, and that happens more than you think.
Yeah. To
basically ask the court to take away those powers.
So you touched on something there. You said like the caregiver. I don't know. It sounds almost like the doctor's assigning them to be the agent.
Yeah.
If they didn't, or maybe they had medical power of attorney, or their living will,
Yep.
it gives them the rights for those decisions. Is it easier to get them to be the
conservator?
Yeah.
Or caregiver?
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing is, for most spouses, we give immediate POA. But really, this comes into what we're talking about, Matt, is right. Really, for a surviving spouse, guess what? Who's that person's agent going to be? Probably one of their children. Doesn't always, but oftentimes it is. And again, the question is, when can that person act, right? And you mentioned does the doctor basically assign it? It's kind of, our clients either choose one, or sometimes they'll say, I'm a little paranoid because doctors they're moving so fast. I would like for my agent to have to get 2 affidavits from a doctor. And then that becomes a springing POA. They cannot act for them until the power of attorney is actually enacted. And then all those powers transfer to them as their agent. And then they can contract, right? With TennCare, with the private market. They can service the caregiver themselves. But yeah, if we don't have those in place, we're going to court for conservatorships, and those are really expensive.
Right. Now, I've had talked to people previously. We talked a lot about TennCare, and a lot of people will talk about the spin down.
Yeah.
What, I guess, I don't know if there's a threshold, an asset threshold or whatever, where you don't need to be looking at a TennCare spin down. You're never going to hit it. I know I'm probably asking more legal advice, but we have kind of a general thing of, yes, you need to make an estate plan, but no, we're not trying to set you up for TennCare.
Yeah, we're not going to proactively plan for Medicaid. That's a really good question, Matt. Yeah, we can talk definitely general parameters around that. Everybody might give you a different answer, right? Whether it's an elder law attorney or a financial advisor. Here's what I want to say to the listeners. A lot of people here in Cookeville, their house is maybe $700,000-800,000 or $1 million in some cases. Yeah. And so it's like, well, my estate's at this amount of money, but it's like, that's not the question. Do we have enough money in our bank accounts or our IRAs to self-insure us if we don't have a long-term care insurance product over the scope of our marital life? So I'm really looking at what are the liquid or the investable assets that they're planning on using. I would say when I see somebody with $1.5 to $2 million in retirement, they have a very low risk of either of them to the point where they're going to ever need to apply for Medicaid. When we get down to under $1 million, I just educate my clients and equip them. But here's the thing. It's about $140,000 a year in a nursing home now, private pay. So if both spouses need 12 to 24 months, that's $2/3 So people that are over $1 million, they have much less risk. I'll put it that way, of cash on hand to pay for long-term care.
Right. One of the things I really remembered, one of the questions I wanted to ask, you talk about it's not always the right thing to, deed your house over to your kids. Or something. The other thing that comes into play is a lot of people look at, they want to make that transfer, but they're also kind of already starting to work that spin down.
What do we do with the house?
Do you still maybe put the house in a trust or something like that, even though you're already kind of getting towards that long-term care may not be that far off?
Yes, we still want to. Now, again, on our previous show, Matt asked the best question is, when do we want to plan? Early, the biggest reason, long-term care. And so the idea is, our retirement accounts, we're kind of spending those, as we're going through retirement, getting ready for if one of us needs, long-term care, we're going to be able to achieve Medicaid. Why do we want to put the home into the trust? And again, for the listeners, come in and see us if you want to talk further about it. The bottom line is estate recovery. When someone on Medicaid passes away and that house is left behind, that's an exempt asset. See, you can retain your house and receive Medicaid. And so if we don't get that house into a trust ahead of time, that is just for lack of better words, it's just sitting out there to be taken. And they're gonna file a TennCare lien against the property. They can file a claim in probate for the full amount of the applicant's care up until their date of death. So we want to plan 5 years in advance. I don't want to bore the listeners with what this 5-year look back is, but essentially while we're healthy, while we're in our 60s, while we're in our 70s, right, we want to go ahead and make a proactive Medicaid plan. Usually that involves the real estate, but not always, but oftentimes it does.
Right. So, long-term care.
Yeah. Okay.
We talked about long-term care, and you talked about that. One of the things I hate traditional long-term care.
It's just no good anymore, is it?
Well, it's gotten so expensive. A lot of the companies are like, "Hey, you can keep your plan, and it'll, but if you keep it, it's going to pay out this much, not what you were expecting it to pay out. Or if you want it to pay out what you the 5 years that you were wanting to have it pay out, now you got to up your premium,
And
or you
significantly so, right?
Yeah. And it's a use it or lose it. I mean, that's speaking that with a relative recently on that. There's kind of the hoops were more than the problem wasn't crossing the line on any of the ADLs. Needs help on all of them,
but it wasn't qualifying for them.
It wasn't qualifying.
Yeah.
And so there's those issues there. So that's one of the things that you mentioned. I currently, my wife and I, we have an annuity with a long-term care rider that, has a multiplier on it basically if we're drawing out for long-term care. But we also are beneficiaries.
There's also a death benefit,
There's
right?
a death benefit.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
the assets can still transfer versus we're not paying $500 a month. And some people, were smart and got a long-term care when they're in their 40s, and they've been paying $500 a month, and they have a heart attack and die, and there's nothing.
Yeah.
Which of course I guess to them it's not really mattering, but it's like if you put that into life insurance or an annuity,
you would have really had an asset.
You have a legacy to leave behind.
Amen. Yeah.
And that's the other thing too. You can have a life insurance policy that has long-term care benefits. It can be an index universal life. It can be a whole life, and even some term life plans have accelerated benefits, or critical or chronic or terminal care, where you can take advances out on those and use them. So it's like life insurance today. A lot of people, it's not life insurance; it's death insurance. It's like, yes, that's the old. That's
not true anymore, right?
That's the old life insurance. Yeah. The new life insurance actually can be like, because a lot of people are, I don't have any dependents. What do I need life insurance? What if you don't die? You end up in a car wreck and you're paraplegic. You're going to have a lot of other expenses. That's something you can draw out on your life insurance to help pay for, maybe to get do the construction on your home to make it accessible, or get that accessible van, those things and you have the money to do it, because those aren't cheap. Now, sometimes there is some assistance on those, but that's why I'm a firm believer in, yes, protect yourself for long-term care. And unfortunately, most of the people that ask me about long-term care are those that are on Medicare or approaching Medicare.
Yep.
And one, it's going to be very expensive because of your age, if you're healthy enough to get it.
At all. Yeah. What Matt is saying is so true. When I look at clients that come in with these policies, we okay on time, Matt?
We are running out of time.
Okay.
Make it quick.
Yeah. Talk to Matt. Look at the options. There's creative ways, basically, we can solve the long-term care issue in 2025.
All right. Well, we're running out of time again. Beacon Legacy Group, beaconlegacygroup.com. Their calendar's there for their upcoming seminars. Or contact us. We'll get it to you. Keep listening. Go to insurancematchmaking.com if you have questions about the show. And remember, at Matt Libby Insurance, we can cover you from head to toe, and it doesn't have to cost you an arm and a leg.
You've been listening to Insurance Matchmaking with Matt Libby, your path to health, life, and Medicare coverage with Matt Libby Insurance.